And we are live without our normal countdown, but we'd like to welcome you to PharSide Pholios, where this month we are celebrating Read a New Book Month. So, what better way to celebrate Read a New Book Month than with a new author or a new author to our audience and to maybe our expanding audience? We are welcoming to the far side Miss Jan Foster all the way from the UK. She lives in
Hello.
Northwest England, where it rains too much for her liking. And however, despite having a busy household filled with children, dogs, several businesses, and books, she retreats into her writing world as much as possible, time permitting. And how great is it that it's kind of rainy here in the States, at least on the East Coast a little bit?
Well,
So
amazingly, it's not raining today.
welcome to the far side, Miss Foster.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to be here.
And you have this wonderful multi-layered background between businesses and books and family. How do you find the time to do all of that and engage in the writing process?
I'm an expert juggler, I think, is probably the easiest way. Yeah, quite a lot of schedules and quite a lot of, right, this is the time for that. That's when I'm doing my writing, and that's when I'm doing the business, and that's when children have to happen and have attention paid, and dogs have to be walked and all that sort of stuff. So it's a bit of a churn at times, but we get there.
And so today we are talking about your book, Disrupting Destiny, and I'm totally loving it.
Oh, great.
Started reading it once I got it, and it's been an amazing journey. I'm still in the early chapters of it, but I love time and place and fantasy, and it brings all of these wonderful things together. So this particular book introduces readers to historical fantasy. So
Yeah.
how would you characterize it in comparison, to some of the other genres, whether sci-fi, mystery, historical fiction, or just fantasy in general?
Well, for me, the best historical fantasy are the ones which make use of the time period. So you have a very specific setting that's rooted in a very specific time period and location. And the fantasy side of it comes in when you can kind of play around with that. You can use it to influence the story. Sometimes it verges into alternate history, which mine kind of does, more in the second book than in the first one. But it just allows you the scope to have a look at what history can teach us with some fresh eyes and sort of say, okay, well, what happened here, or what could have happened here. And I love it because I love the historical research side of it. I love to imagine myself in those places at those times. And I love to ask the questions that perhaps, people then were asking, what's going on down here? How is that going to impact me? How do I feel about it? And kind of explore that side of it as well and see what relevance it has for today.
And in this book,
in
you
answer to your
begin.
question, actually, it is different
Oh
from
yeah.
fantasy because fantasy can be anywhere, any place, any time. It's entirely, a world of the author's devising, whereas historical fantasy has a very definite setting.
And so, thinking about setting, with book one in this series, with a time in history, a specific location, was that your selection of the setting for this particular book based on like familiar territory or having connection to that area?
I think from probably childhood, have been slightly obsessed with Tudors. I love that whole century. I love the different characters in it. I love how they came to rule in England, and I love that change that they evoked in this country and across, the globe, really. Mm-hmm. So I've always been interested in that time period, and when I was looking at plotting out a series, I really struggled with deciding, well, which exact queen, king am I going to have, or set this in. So the whole story arc for the series, the Naturae series, covers that century of rule, and there's a lot going on there. But then I narrowed it down to very, very specific years when it seemed to me there was a lot of change. If you look back even over our recent history, you can think, well, okay, 2020 was the year of the pandemic, 21, etc. So you look back at those years, and they caused such an upheaval that it was cataclysmic for the people that lived then and live now, obviously. So I narrowed it down to specific years and the events that happened in those years, and used that as my basis for the storyline and what the characters were going to go through at that time.
And so that basically answers even my next question about how time and place shape your story. You talked about, what's happening in those years. So what were some of the things historically from that time period that you connected to?
Well, when I started writing Disrupting Destiny, we in England had just really were dealing with the ramifications of Brexit. And it was something that was very, very polarizing. The whole country was literally split 50-50 in terms of for or against. And it occurred to me that the year that sort of might resonate with my readers was 1535, 1536, which was when Henry VIII broke with Rome. And you had a real conflict of beliefs. You had people that were very loyal to the Catholic Church. You had people that were wanting to try this new Protestant religion and feeling that resonated with them. So there was this divide. And that was what sort of started it. And I have lots of ongoing themes that run through my book as well, or through the series. Things like the nature of faith. People's faith was shaken at that time. I think people now these days are also questioning. They're worried, they're concerned about whether their faith is the right faith for this modern age. Is it appropriate? Does it resonate with them still, even as they grow up? I also talk a lot about the nature of monarchy and what it means to rule, what it means to be a leader, what qualities that you should have, whether you are the right person for the job or whether you are imposing your beliefs upon someone else, upon your people. So there's ongoing themes that are within the series and introduced really in Disrupting Destiny that I think, well, I hope will be an interesting discourse for my readers as well.
And an interesting discourse for new readers coming into the genre. I think it will be a wonderful entrance into the time period as well as into just, the story as you've laid it out.
It does. I hope. I hope it prompts them to just think about these things. It's a story. It's an escape at the end of the day. And if that's all that, that they want to take away from it, great. But there is more behind it.
Okay. Can you give our audience and those who will actually watch by replay kind of the premise behind Disrupting Destiny?
Yeah, so Disrupting Destiny introduces you to my two main characters who are called Aoife and Joshua. Aoife has a really big secret that she hasn't even told Joshua, which is to to be revealed, obviously, in the course of the book, pretty early on in the book. But it's one that she can't escape. She is running away from it. She's been living in, human society for a century with Joshua. They're trying to have their happy ever after. They're trying to just be with each other, exist. And that's got its own problems, quite a lot of problems, actually, because, if you've got wings, it's pretty hard to hide. So the crunch point comes when, unfortunately, they are ripped apart. Her destiny has caught up with her, and there's nothing she can do about it. And actually, there's nothing he can do about it either, because he's left devastated by this. So the storyline follows what happens to them individually, and then what happens to them together as a couple as well. So, yeah, I like to think of it as a journey rather than just a story. And it is a journey, quite literally, for Joshua, certainly.
And you had released the prequel, Risking Destiny, just prior. So what makes this story so special to you, whether it's the theme, characters, the setting, what connects you or drives you in this series?
Well, Risking Destiny is a bit of an outlier, actually. I wrote Disrupting Destiny first, and it has in it an antagonist, a big bad. And the more I wrote this antagonist, the more interested I was in how she got to be like she is, because she's pretty evil. And I think it was a challenge to myself, really, more than anything else. I don't really see very many books which do that descent into villainy. So nobody's born bad. Nobody just wakes up and goes, I'm going to be evil now from now on. Nobody does that. It just doesn't happen. And I find that really frustrating in some books where their bad guy is just two layered. That's it. He's bad and he's going to do this. And hopefully that good is going to win out in the end. But you've got kind of no motivation for the bad guy. So for me personally, I wanted to explore how she got to be the way that she is. And I have to confess, I'm a little bit of a Viking freak as well. I love Vikings. They are, to me, the early heroes, really. So much of our culture just simply wouldn't be without the Vikings. They weren't, perhaps by modern standards, perhaps the kindest of people, but I think they probably were. They were explorers at the end of the day. They were driven to leave their homes, leave their families, and set up somewhere else entirely in a completely new country. Now that to me is actually a revelation. If you look at them in that context, and then you try and think about the kind of people that, what attributes you would need to do that, to leave your family, to leave everything that you know and start again. So I really, really wanted to bring the Vikings into the Naturally series somehow, just because I really like them. And it actually seemed to fit the setting very, very well. So Risking Destiny takes place in 800 AD, which was when the Vikings first invaded the island just to the north of Scotland. And they were massively disruptive for the culture there, which was, quite a thriving community. And actually, interestingly, the history of the Scottish Orkney Isles and Shetland Isles is fascinating if you want to go back that far. So in Risking Destiny, it was partly the story, a more sympathetic story, perhaps, of Vikings. So you start off with it being your typical perceived impression of Vikings coming in, blah, blah, slash, kill, etc. But actually, you come to realize that they weren't really like that at all. They had their own belief systems. They were not necessarily imposing those belief systems. They wanted to share and make a new way forward rather than this is the way it is. So in that story, you've got the conflict of the cultures. You've got this fantasy culture, the Fae, and that meets with the Vikings, and it doesn't end happily. So I will forewarn readers. This is Risking Destiny is a villain's descent. It's how a bad guy is made. What has hurt her so badly that she sees no other way to behave, and it is a tragedy. Sorry. Fair warning. I probably should put big red marks all over it saying, don't read if you get upset easily, because I can't help it. So yeah, that was the story of Risking Destiny. And therefore, because it is set in 800 AD rather than 1500s, it is a prequel. There will be another prequel coming, which is a somewhat nicer romance, the meeting of my two main characters, how they met, how they fell in love, how they came to be. But that's to come next year.
Okay, so readers, we have that to look forward to. So
I think that'll be a lot nicer for people. And Vikings. Some people really like Vikings.
So that will give us more to explore. And so while you're reading Disrupting Destiny now, if you're reading it or hearing about Disrupting Destiny now, then we can go back to this Risking Destiny prequel, so we can discover the making of a villain, and then we have something exciting, more to look forward to in the coming, in our coming work. And so with this Disrupting Destiny, I thought the intro, the beginning, was so intriguing and beautiful, because it seems like an awakening of sorts, a birthing process, a connecting, a realization of, okay, I voice and sound, and I have this, and I barely see, and there's blood, there's this, there's that. But it was like a breaking forth kind of awakening type thing. So how does that set the tone for all of the things that come after?
I think you're absolutely right, Monica. It is a birth. It's a rebirth. Essentially, in the first chapter, Joshua is reborn. He is made Fae, which is, as the reader will discover, unusual, never before happened. It's an oddity. But any birth is a fresh start. Any rebirth in particular, it's about new beginnings, and then you've got the rest of your life kind of laid out for you to explore and to discover. So that's why I opened it with that particular scene. It actually has a lot more relevance when you get to you realize why that is so significant, why he is so unusual. But then it's, that's why you do it like that. And I hope that the reader will therefore be intrigued enough to want to carry on and find out what happened in his story and her story.
And so you have history, you have fantasy, and romance, a little romance combination going on.
Yeah, it is romance. It's romance for me as well. I'm 47. I'm happily married. You've been around the block, and it's romance because it does talk about a relationship, a romantic relationship, but it's not a new romantic relationship. This is an established one. So one of the or some of the themes that kind of recur through this is the challenges of maintaining a mature relationship, because quite frankly, I'm not 16 anymore. I'm not feeling that first flush of love. My challenge is to help keep my marriage alive. My readers, I'm assuming, are not dissimilar in their age. It's great to have a new romance. That's wonderful. But I think perpetuating that magic, that intimacy together is sometimes difficult. So, I look at themes, that as a theme through my book as well. I don't like having new things. But I will say this, in book 2, there is a new romance. There is that flush.
So what? And since you're in such a specific niche, what is the challenge of writing so specifically with such a combination, of a mix of genres, so to speak? So what is that challenge in the writing process so it doesn't end up sounding cookie cutter?
I think anyone that reads my books will realize that they're most definitely not cookie cutter. I actually struggled because, to be quite honest with you, I kind of hadn't really twigged that there was a set trope formula. I just wrote what I wanted to write with the story that I wanted to tell. And then it was only kind of when I was editing it, I realized, oh, maybe I should have followed this particular trope a little bit more. So if you don't have that, it does make marketing harder. So that's the challenge, because it doesn't fit nice and neat into a little groove, and you can say, hey, this is fantasy, this is that. It is difficult. I'm not going to beat about the bush with that. But if I went down that cookie cutter route, then I think I wouldn't feel very true to my voice as an author. It's possible I could put out a lot of books that are, following a very formulaic story and in a setting that's new and in a history that's, relevant. It's possible, but for me, my characters have such unique challenges, and they're actually constrained by the lack of magic. I know that sounds weird. My books are quite low magic, really, comparative to fantasy anyway. In some fantasy worlds, and you get a magician and he can do absolutely everything. Well, in my world, you can't. There are rules. You can't break the rules. This is what your magic can do, and some people can't do it. In fact, a lot of people can't do it. So how do you deal with that? It would be easier. It would be a lot easier if I was to follow a nice little set thing. There is a structure to any book, though, and you have to follow your character's arc, and they have peaks and troughs, and but that is just part of writing and plotting, really.
And you've also written children's books.
Yeah.
So where do you feel more at ease with writing for children or adults, or do you have a preference?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I think it's actually easier writing for adults. I would expect most people would think it was the other way around, because you think children, simpler language, but actually it's you have to moderate your language with children, but at the same time push their boundaries. You have to be able to give them some words that are unfamiliar so that they learn, so that they understand, and they ask, hopefully, the question of, what does that word mean? What does that word mean? So they grow. I would love to write more children's books. I would love to do rhyming books, that sort of thing. I think rhyme is an incredibly important tool for children to learn. So, but that is very difficult. Actually, it's really quite hard to get the meter right. And there's an added challenge with children's books as well, which is, well, I write picture books, so I keep doing this, don't I? So the challenge with picture books is that the illustrative cost is quite high to get the quality for what you want to convey. Unfortunately, what I'm not is an artist. I wish I was. I wish I could draw, but I can't. So yeah, I have to work with illustrators to make that happen. So adults books, words, a lot easier.
Well, we look forward to future children's books, possibly
yeah, there are more
down
in the
the
works.
road.
There are more in the works. There's just some hiccups related to the disaster that you need to overcome right now. Pandemic problems,
Yes, and I think many authors are experiencing that around the globe, as
Yeah,
dealing with shipping and marketing and sales and the book fairs and festivals that happened annually or in person, and those kinds of events and in-person readings and coffee
yeah.
houses and talks where they're happening somewhat virtually. It's very different
It's different.
kind of space.
But you have to look at it as an opportunity, is my
Mhm.
belief. I probably wouldn't be here talking to you now if it wasn't for the advent of the technology that has been pushed through and widely used by the pandemic. So in-person events, great, can't wait to do them. Absolutely, really excited to do them. Not yet done them though, just not happened. But on the other hand, I'm here, I'm in Manchester in England, and I'm talking to you across the pond. There's opportunity everywhere. You have to look at it like that. Seize the day.
Seize the day, most definitely. So, what is something that you hope that readers will think about or take away from not just disrupting destiny, but as they make their way through the series?
I would like to provide escape. My books possibly slow burn to begin with, but when you get into them, then they're a little bit unputdownable. Also, I've been told, or that's by design. I hope. I try. It's they have storylines full of surprises and twists, a setting that will hopefully transport you to extraordinary worlds, and some characters that I hope you'll fall in love with and want to read more of. So that's what I wish people would take away.
And we have some aspiring writers who tune in and catch the replays. So, what are some, I guess, words of wisdom that you could give to aspiring writers or even established writers who are in that writing process or just have an idea or concept?
I used to do screenwriting, and there's a phrase which I'm not sure I'm allowed to say here, but its initials are AIS, arse in seat. You don't get any words done if you don't sit down and write them. Believe that you have something worthy to say, even if it's just for you, even if it's just for the cathartic process of writing. You just have to believe that you are worthy and that your voice is valid. That's about it, really. That's the best advice I can offer.
Um, that acronym should stay in our heads. And
AIS.
so,
And okay, well, the thing is now these people do a lot of work with dictaphones. They walk and
mhm.
talk. Personally, I need to sit down, screen in front of me. If I'm not here, sat down writing, it's not going to get written. It's that simple.
All right. So, how can our viewer work on social media? I think I have some of those pieces
Yeah,
here to
yeah.
show.
They were
Uh,
just scrolling a minute ago. I have
it
an
was
author
just,
website called escapeintoatale.com. And I love to chat socially, so please come and follow me on Instagram, jan.foster.author, and Jan Foster Author on Facebook as well. So hopefully I can meet some of you there. I'd love a follow. I always follow back.
all right. Thank you so much, Jan, for
Thank
sharing
you for
those.
having
So,
me.
Disrupting Destiny is the name of the book that we shared on today, but she's got a whole series, a natural series that you want to check out. So the prequel, Risking Destiny, is out, and there's another prequel that she stated is fourth coming. And the second
Second
in
book.
book 2 of the
Yeah,
series.
book 2. Yeah, that's Anarchic Destiny. And
Mhm.
for those of you that like a little bit of chaos, then that's that's coming soon as well. That's coming in February.
All right, so we've got some great reads and good reads ahead of us. This is Read a New Book Month. December is Read a New Book Month.
Give it a go.
So
Disrupting
I
Destiny is on sale
encourage
right now.
you, why not read a new book and make this book your Read a New Book for December, and then look forward,
Ooh.
go back and pick up the prequel and follow the series. If you like me, you want to read the whole series. Once you start, you got to finish the series. You can't just leave off with just book 1. You got to
No.
follow the whole
I
whole
forgot to
series.
mention, it's December. Disrupting Destiny is set in December. So if you want to know what Tudor Christmas was like, well, it's a
Oh,
good time
that
of
is
year.
nice. Good. Perfect timing for the month of December, Miss Foster. So I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you so much for spending this time with us this
Thank you
morning
for
on the
having me.
PharSide Pholios. And we wish you all the success with your naturalized series and
Thank you.
children's books and business and family and dogs and all that you do there. And we want to tell our readers and live play viewers and those who will catch the replay to make sure that you're staying in tune to the Farside Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews, posts as we celebrate Read a New Book Month in December. And I'm your host, Monica Leek of PharSide Pholios, managing editor of the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed and have a great day.